Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft is making the bold and yet also utterly conventional and unavoidable decision to bypass every single Japanese male of any notoriety whatsoever in the entire history of the islands, to go for the singular, obscure black person in Japan's history, Yasuke. Is anybody surprised? Is anybody shocked? No? Listen, okay. You will forgive me my schadenfreude here, okay? I am a Norwegian. They turned my historical rulers into black women. On the grand scheme of things, progressivism has still hurt me more than you. And to add to this as well, I adore the visuals of the big black samurai. Yes, I know there's no actual evidence that he was one, but it is the current year, and so here we go. Murdering dozens of Japanese people, even as their women and children fawn over him. There's something beautifully NTR-ish about all of it, isn't it? And hey, okay, let me present you with an actual argument as well, why this is just nothing more than a good thing, right? The primary goal right now should be to inoculate Japan, the last bastion of actually unpoliticized entertainment in the world, against Western DEI nonsense. How better to do this than this way, huh? How better to do it than to simply just drag their history through the mud and the dirt for as long, as deep, and as thoroughly as possible, including, of course, a nice big fat editing war as well on the Wikipedia page, as when it was confirmed that Yasuke would be starring in Assassin's Creed, you had dozens of edits on the same day back and forth, because the original Wikipedia article said that there was no evidence that Yasuke was a samurai, which, as far as I'm aware, is true. Nobunaga appears to have taken a liking to Yasuke because, well, he did look extraordinarily unusual, and he was apparently absolutely ginormous for the time, particularly in Japan. And so Nobunaga thought to himself, okay, well, this will be pretty cool to have around, and so he gave him a stipend and a house, which does not make him a samurai, and then, what was it? Had him carry his tools or something as a retainer or personal servant, in essence, and there are, half a dozen or so mentions of him surrounding Nobunaga, with no real mention of him specifically in his own right, really, beyond his connection to Nobunaga and the missionaries who brought him to begin with to Japan. But to yet further add to this as well, there's a very interesting thing here. So Grums apparently dug this up. Infinita Chronicle here says, I worked on some narrative elements for the Sengoku era of Japan for Assassin's Creed back in 2013 and 14. When I worked under contract in San Jose, Tokyo area, I guess they tossed all of that out for Black Samurai and some cannon-destroying kunoichi boss. Ah, yes, incidentally, there is a girl boss as well, because, well, look at the calendar, it is 2024 after all. I'm so glad I'm not in that industry anymore. I guess it's only fitting that my contribution to these studios vanished like everything else I worked on. Every MMO shooter I worked on has been shut down. Here's a brief synopsis of the original story. The plot focused on the young monk Yamauchi Taka. As a playable ancestor, Taka means hawk, to coincide with the then naming convention of every playable hero being named after a bird of prey. The main conflict was about the Sword of Eden, aka Excalibur, Honjo, Masamune, Genghis Khan's sword, etc., and how it had given its last wielder, Oda Nobunaga, an unfair advantage in his conquest of Japan. So it was to be a Japanese character in Japan fighting against other Japanese characters. Well, that doesn't sound very inclusive now, does it? No, it sounds downright exclusive, in fact. And so, of course, all of that was indeed removed. There's even some of the concept art here, apparently, of a Japanese Assassin's Creed. Oh well, Black Samurai and kunoichi it is. What a shame. See, again, Accelerationism is the name of the game here. For years and years, this was what we went through as well in the early days of Gamergate, where we were looking at these people and thinking to ourselves, Oh, well, they're clearly just ignorant. They don't know, right? If I can only explain to them that what they're doing is destructive, or I can prove to them that the hobby has always been inclusive, they'll stop, right? Because surely that's at the end of the day their actual goal, to make something good, right? To improve the hobby, to improve the product? No, of course not. And the sooner we pass this lesson on to the Japanese by, watching their history be dragged through the mud, the better. The earlier the Japanese realize that no, none of their history, none of their stories, none of their traditions, none of their stuff will ever be respected in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, the earlier we will have successfully inoculated anime against this nonsense. And that means at least we'll get some decent entertainment, whilst the rest of the West shakes off the inertia of a decade or so of absolute cultural hegemony by a force whose only interest in aforementioned cultural hegemony is ruining absolutely everybody else's toys. And, okay, let's briefly address the other thing as well, right? At least it's a historical character, right? That's something. And hey, you know what? That is actually something. Every time they do this in World War II, when they add in random cyborg females, I point towards the Russian snipers and go, okay, if you absolutely want a female campaign, there is one right there. Russian women served in the Soviet military as mostly specialist troops and mostly transportation and medical personnel, but also famously as snipers. This was after experiments of the Red Army during the Russian Civil War, where there was an attempt to actually, include, I guess that's good enough for us anything, women into frontline battalions and fighting formations. Because, the socialist revolution was all equal, right? Well, it turns out that the women didn't actually do very well fighting alongside the men in mixed unit formations. There were a whole lot of problems with that, including an increased casualty rate amongst the male soldiers as well, as it turns out that men will do damn near anything to save a woman in need, even running into enemy machine guns. But hey, details, right? So if you've got an actual historical example, then that's certainly a lot better than just simply making up a character, which, incidentally, I just want to point out, they are doing both here. So you've got Yasuke, the Black Samurai. Okay, that ticks the inclusion checkbox, but what about diversity? He is, after all, still a filthy, dirty, straight male, after all. Well, enter fantasy female kunoichi. And hey, I'm not even opposed to the idea of a sexy female ninja, but once again, check the calendar, it is the year 2024, so I can guarantee you she's not going to be very sexy. In fact, from what we've seen so far, she looks, well, like every other female character the last 10 years. Like a boy, wearing man's clothing. At one point, that was kind of unique. At one point, the whole idea of a woman dressing up as a man was, a bit of a strange plot point, a bit of fish out of water thing, Joan of Arc, etc. Now, that is actually every single solitary character. Ah, the current year. What a beautiful time to be alive. And is it gonna... Okay, the further elephant in the room. Why should anybody care? Maybe it'll be good. Okay, one, it's made by DEI people, which means it's not going to be good. You're not going to have people working on this that have any quality or interest or expertise. You're going to have people who are politically motivated, which will in turn absolutely ruin it. No doubt about it. And even if, by some miracle, they manage to create a good product, does it even matter at this point? I would argue, no. Look at X-Men 97. I've brought this example up several times now because it is a beautiful one. It is actually a good animated series with very little, if any, wokeism actually in it, and yet it has been completely ignored by the entirety of its target audience because its creator looked at aforementioned target audience and said, I hate you. Okay then, well there you go. Look at Doctor Who, which we covered the other day, having some of the worst ratings in the series' history, specifically because the creators came out and said they hated the audience. At some point, the quality of the work is actually unironically irrelevant to the creators of the work telling you not to watch it. And, I don't know, but Black Samurai plus his female girl boss man-woman kunoichi companion in Japan, that sounds like a pretty damn clear urge to not play it to me. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Till next time, I have been Arch, and It's time for Japan to suffer what I already have. Till next time, have a good day.